Greetings and welcome to the Holy Cross Institute for this Easter edition of our webinar series. I'm Richard Bouch, I'm the Executive Director and your host. Today's webinar is the Artists of the Holy Cross Institute, and it features two internationally renowned artists, Jenn Hassin and Robert Gerwing. We are delighted to have Jenn and Robert with us to talk about their artwork, which is permanently on display in the Holy Cross Institute. We'll begin our program today with a prayer, and I invite Meg Sturgeon, our Assistant Director at the Institute, to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Rich. Let's begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gracious God, you have surrounded us with a world of beauty. In your goodness, you have revealed the splendor of your mind in creation, gifting us with a living sacrament by which we may enter into your own beauty, brilliance, and goodness. You have given your children a share in your work, allowing us to participate in your creative activity through our own work, and especially through our art. We give you thanks for this privilege, and we ask that you guide artists everywhere, that they may glorify you and honor your beauty in their art. We thank you in a special way for our speakers this afternoon, and in particular for their art which now graces the Holy Cross Institute. We ask your blessing upon them and upon this conversation, that they may inform us, inspire us, and lead us to a greater appreciation of you, who are the great artist and the source of all that is beautiful. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Megs. The mission of the Holy Cross Institute at St. Edward's University is to elevate values and pedagogical practices that reflect the charism of the Congregation of Holy Cross. Foremost among these practices is educating minds alongside the formation of hearts. You can see by this map how far we reach. The Institute works closely with a network of Holy Cross schools, colleges, and universities to promote mission integration on their campuses. The Institute enriches these schools pedagogically, and we aim to benefit all students who are transformed by their Holy Cross experience. Ave Crux, Spes Unica. To highlight two signature programs of the Holy Cross Institute, we annually host Convocation. It's a gathering of some 300 Holy Cross educators for 3 days of professional development around mission and Holy Cross vision. Convocation is growing, with 300 guests at our 2024 event, coming from 8 different countries and representing 42 Holy Cross schools, colleges, and universities. Our theme for this year's Convocation was With Hope to Bring, and it took place in February, just 2 months ago. Our other signature program is the Holy Cross Charism Initiative, which is an online curriculum in 10 modules that teaches the essentials of Holy Cross, from the founding history through charism and mission. Since its launch last year, hundreds of teachers and ministers have begun their study. They typically complete the modules, and you see them listed there, all 10. They typically complete these modules asynchronously, and then they often meet in cohorts at their schools to discuss all that it means to be Holy Cross. Another signature of ours is the space of the Holy Cross Institute on the campus of St. Edward's University. The Institute is a destination for transformation. Visual art plays a large role in that transformation. Art has a place of prominence. As is typically the case, it starts with the women and men of Holy Cross, specifically the brothers of Holy Cross. I'm talking about brothers such as Brother Simon Scribner, Brother Hilarion Jerome Brisek, and Brother Victorian Raymond Florkowski. They were among the many artists whose brushes brought forth the beauty of God and creation. These brothers were typically leaders at St. Edward's University, either as professors or as counselors or sometimes even as presidents. But they were also gifted with a love for God's beauty, and so they took up the brush and they painted. Their studio paintings form a collection that today largely sits in storage, but it is coming to light on the walls of the Holy Cross Institute. It is our privilege to honor the brothers and their legacy by exhibiting their artwork. The current exhibit here at the Institute features the motif of trees with wood evocative of the Holy Rood, the Cross of Christ. Ave Crux Spes Unica. Amid the brothers' artwork, we have placed the work of two artists, Jenn Hassin and Robert Gerwing, to amplify the spirit of Holy Cross within the Holy Cross Institute. Jenn's work of art is titled Embodied, Cross and Anchors, and it hangs on a wall in the largest room in the Institute, between two stained glass windows. The cross and anchors is a defining symbol of Holy Cross, and this cross and anchors truly expresses the spirit of service. Jenn, welcome to the Holy Cross Institute, if virtually. As we wait for her to get connected, I am going to now turn to our other artist, Robert Gerwing. Robert, welcome to the Holy Cross Institute. Robert has painted icons of Blessed Father Basile Moreau, you can see him there on the left, and Saint Brother André Bessette. And they hang in the same room as Jenn's cross and anchors. It's a large room, and they are present there. So Robert, I invite you to speak with us about the process of painting an icon, the materials that you use, the adherence to tradition, the different devices that iconographers use to employ and make their art extremely and exquisitely so special. Robert, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. The iconography is an age-old tradition in the East as well as the West. Our earliest images are from the 3rd century. The first 2 centuries, we do not have images. And in the 3rd century, we have as the first image that at Adura Europa. The icons that we paint today are in adherence with tradition. They're usually done in egg tempera, which is painting egg yolk and pigment. I also use acrylic. I also know the true fresco technique, and I use that occasionally. The icons are done on gessoed panels. There's a procedure for preparing the panels. Sometimes I buy pre-prepared panels to work with. The iconography itself, the first step is to apply the gold leaf. It's actual gold of different varying carats, which affects the color. And that's applied with a mordant. And then that's worked and burnished, as you see here, with a circular halo and rays coming down. After that, the figure is painted. The last part of the icon that's to be painted is the face. And the work is done from dark to light. So we paint everything the darkest color first, and then we start adding lighter colors. Now, the iconography looks a little bit strange. It's not naturalistic, and that's traditional too. And there are rules for how we stylize a figure. For the case of Basile Moreau and André Bessette, we have images of them that are from the time. So they sort of merge with portraiture. The iconography is a church-regulated art form in the East, and there are devices that we use to maintain the purity of the icon, and they're very different from Western naturalistic images. So for example, in an icon, we have no vanishing point. What does that mean? That means that we have no diminution rather. That means that figures in the background will not become smaller, but rather larger. We consider the vanishing point to be a human limitation. And because we're dealing with spiritual art, we try to paint the eye with an omniscient God. So therefore, the vanishing point in an icon is the eye of the beholder. And when we have something, for instance, a prism that we're painting, we would paint it as though our eye were projecting it. So it's exactly the opposite of Western vanishing points and the perspective that was established by Bramante and Brunelleschi. Another thing that we do in the iconography is we don't have an external light source. So for example, in this icon, there's nothing casting a shadow. The only shadows that are there are to define a surface. So if we, in Western painting and naturalistic painting, we include a light source, say maybe in the upper left-hand corner, and then we paint the shadows accordingly. But in an icon, the light has to be coming straight out. Here again, we're trying to deal with a spiritual reality rather than a naturalistic reality. So the light comes straight out. It's interesting, some of the things that are done in an icon that are misrepresented in the West as a lack of understanding, for instance, of perspective, is exactly the opposite. Perspective was understood and inverted and then transformed into images on curved surfaces. So there's a very complex understanding of perspective. When it comes to diminution, figures in the background of an icon or the background of a crowd, for example, we paint the 40 Holy Martyrs of Sebaste, for example. Figures in the background, rather than getting smaller, get larger. There again, the eye of God would not have the diminution in the background of a painting. And so we try to deal with the spiritual form. When the paintings are, interestingly, if we're painting a still life, for example, on a table, say, for example, in the hospitality of Abraham, where three angels are centered around a table, the figures, the elements on the table are seen from different viewpoints. It wasn't until the end of the 19th century that Cezanne employed that very same technique. So thereby we were looking at different sides of the same object at the same time, as perhaps a divine eye would see. So these are just a couple of the rules for iconography. And so our work looks much different than naturalistic work, but it's for a reason. What else? I'm trying to think of what else I could say. Do you have some questions for me there?
I do. The one thing I definitely wanted to ask you about was the very experience of painting icons of some of the giants of Holy Cross. I know that you painted these figures in the past, Father Moreau and Brother André, and also Our Lady of Sorrows. But was this particular experience in any way unique or especially consoling? Is each one, different in its own way? And here I'd also like to talk about the biblical verses that you asked us to supply for those icons of Father Moreau and Brother André.
Okay, let's talk about Brother André first. Oh, we'll talk about Brother André first. Okay. I had, of course, before I paint an icon, I always research it. So I learn the life of the saint. I say prayers to the saint. In this case, I sent away for the oil of Saint Joseph even, and I make friends with the saint. And at this point in my life, I've painted so many of the saints so many times that they're like old friends to me. And that was the case. I was sort of making a friend with Brother André here. And so I really enjoyed learning more about him and just trying to contemplate his life and his saintliness as I painted the icons. The passage on his open book here describes the healings, the crowds that are healed, and of course, Brother André was known as a healer, and many people came, many crowds came to be healed by him. I don't know in recent times if we have records of anybody performing as many miracles as he did when it comes to healing.
It was
Of course, he's in
extremely.
the yes, sir.
I was just going to say it was just extremely special for us when you invited us to choose a verse. The Bible was open. The whole of the Bible was open, and we were praying as well. And we were led to this verse in the Gospel of Matthew. And we're when it found us, is how I would put it. it felt like the perfect piece for that part of the icon. Mm-hmm.
Well, that was perfectly appropriate. Very dear, very dear. Yeah, I think that it's really wonderful too to think of the humility of Brother Andre, and I tried to meditate on that as I was painting this too. It was a wonderful, wonderful gift. I've painted him before, but every time is new, and it's like making a friend all over again.
How about Father Moreau? Maybe we can go back to that icon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Father Moreau's interesting life. I just am amazed at what he did in one short life. And I appreciate the emphasis of the order, the charism of the education, and the idea of what is that line? The fear of God is the beginning of education, I believe it goes. And I thought of that when I thought of Father Moreau, especially. But the amount of work he did in one life, that he accomplished in one life, was just amazing to me. And of course, this passage on his Bible talks about the role of the teacher and the wonderful wonderful gift it is of teaching. Having been a teacher myself at different times in my life, I certainly identified with that. It was a wonderful opportunity. I'm glad I made acquaintances with him.
Lovely, lovely. I was thinking about Vatican II at one point, and specifically the document Perfecte Caritatis, which called the church and especially religious congregations and orders to rediscover the charism of their founder. And that has borne amazing fruit over the last 50 years. This is a large part of the Institute's mission. And for us, it's a question of understanding Father Moreau better, knowing Father Moreau and his writings better, and making them better known, making sure that in the schools, colleges, and universities that we serve, they're well known. So we're always rediscovering him, but I feel that your work, this icon, helps us to do the work of Vatican II, to rediscover him in even new ways.
Mm-hmm. I was impressed. I didn't know much of the work that the Holy Cross Fathers did, I confess. And I was impressed as I got into that. And my conversations with you got me curious. I was amazed at the work that they were doing in educational facilities around the country and around the world. So it was a wonderful eye-opener for me, and opening to a whole new wonderful world of the Holy Cross Fathers.
Thank you
The
so
other
much.
thing I wanted to say quickly was, when I was doing the André, I was thinking about Father Moreau having made the Order of the Men initially with their patron of Saint Joseph. And I thought of how that humility of Joseph just seemed to ring true for Brother André.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one gem after another as I was painting one more beautiful thing, after another.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I paint icons.
That's right. And these are the very roots of Holy Cross that you discovered in this holy process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to turn now and welcome Jenn Hassin to the webinar. Jenn, welcome. It's great to see you.
Good to see you all.
Yes. We've been visiting with Robert about his icons, and now we'd like to turn to your work, Embodied, the Cross and Anchors. So I would invite you to describe this Cross and Anchors, and feel free to describe it in as much detail as you would like. You can tell us about the material, tell us about the story behind it, how it came to be. Please, the mic is yours.
Oh, thank you. First off, wonderful image. These images that I keep seeing being taken of cross and anchors are always so interesting, and I want to attribute that to the beautiful stained glass windows that flank this work. That really was the inspiration behind the composition for for the rolled paper. So this work is entirely made out of rolled paper that, and I come from a paper making practice. So this is paper made out of clothing. That was, we had these community engagement workshops on campus where we primarily worked with brothers, but also people from the Holy Cross Institute, students, the St. Edward's community all came together, and we made paper out of clothing and transformed it. But then we also wrote on the paper with hopes for St. Edward's and prayers and positivity and messages. And it all culminated into this work of art. But that initial walk into the space and seeing the stained glass to the left and to the right of it is what brought this idea to have a composition that would be like stained glass. But I initially thought that it was going to be this grayscale piece, because I was thinking the brothers, and I remember having brothers as professors at St. Ed's and thinking that, oh, they wear black and white. And this is the most colorful piece to date that I have ever made. And I find that really fascinating. So the composition with the cross and anchors in the center, but then also having the olive leaf on the left with the dove on the right, the fish on the lower left, and then a heart with a cross on the right, all are inspired by different of the core values of the Holy Cross Institute.
Thanks so much. I think we have a few more images too, where people can really appreciate the paper itself and how it's, in fact, you can see there, it's rolled. And so it really is textured, and it projects depth. That's what I've always taken from your work, and this one especially. I wanted to.
And I can speak to why I roll paper, which takes us way back, you and I, Dr. Bouch, to well, it takes. I mean, first time I ever went to Israel was, after my class with you, but which was Jewish studies. But I lived with a girl that was Israeli Italian. And that's who I lived with in England. And she often would go to Israel to visit with her family. And she would always write her letter for the Western Wall before she would go to Israel. Otherwise, her mother would be there breathing down her neck for her letter that she would write. And she didn't want that. So she would always make sure to write it in Cambridge, England before she would go. And that's where I was stationed. So I was stationed in England, and she was a student at King's College, and she would always fold the paper and she would roll it and take it with her. And so but it was a single coil, which is to me a symbol of life to death, beginning to end. And but it's also, there's so much symbolism that goes along with that for Judaism, and but also Christianity. There's so much symbolism with the spiral. But that was my original reason for rolling paper. And my first project that I ever did with rolled paper was my thesis at St. Edward's University back in 2012. So yeah, it's lovely to have another rolled paper piece on campus.
Right. Yeah, no, the work since then, your work has just been tremendous, both the quality and the quantity. So it's extremely special that you did Cross and Anchors for the Institute, and that it now hangs in a place of prominence in the Holy Cross Institute. So that's really neat. I was going to ask maybe one final question for you. Would you care to comment on the kind of the larger aesthetic of the Holy Cross Institute? Because as we were planning the space, you helped us a lot. Your artistic vision really helped us to get the aesthetic. And really, I'm talking about what we talked about, the use of wood You can see it here in the shelf, but also in those chairs. The kind of the gold elements, the white walls, the feeling of warmth that wood expresses, and of course the wood's connection to the cross. Do you have could you share a little bit with us about that?
Absolutely. So first walking into that space was it's such a warm space now, but when we first walked in it was not. So I feel like it's fair to giggle a little bit for anybody that got to visit that space before it was what it is now. The Holy Cross Institute definitely provides so much for the people, for everyone, but if you go into that space, you want to have an experience, not even knowing what the Holy Cross Institute is. You go in wanting to be there and spend time there, and that was one of the things that you wanted. You wanted students to be able to feel comfortable. You wanted it to be a place where people could go, and if they needed a quiet space or if they needed a place to have lunch, and like a group of people could be there. But we also wanted it to have these to have all the materials within the space to have meaning and to have to be really thought out. The wood, bringing the wood elements and having those gold accents throughout. So the work, the artwork with the icons, that gold being carried out throughout the entire space, in every room. And that there's a rolled paper piece when you first walk in, outside of the institute with the label, and then coming through all the way through, and it's the last thing you see too. So it's really tying the entire space together, but also with this map that clearly states this is where every location is, and it's interactive and interesting, and engaging, and also those core values, you can see respect and bringing hope, but there's several other core values that are listed up there as well. And so it I think engages with the student body, and with also anyone that comes in and visits the space. And I think it's been really successful. But also I want to say too, the rugs, the flooring that you brought in as well, really tie into that aspect too.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been it's been a vision that we've been pursuing, and we've been pursuing it together. A number of people have made just great contributions, and it really is, it's a gift. It's a gift from our Lord, clearly. So, friends, if you on the webinar have questions or comments for either Robert or Jenn, we invite you to put those in the chat. We'll be coming to those in just a minute, so please do share with us a question or a thought that you might have. Now, I would like to invite Jenn and Robert to ask questions of each other, or simply to comment on the art and the artist who's across from you here in the Holy Cross Institute.
I love the colors of your work, Jenn. I think that the colors, especially the blues bleeding into purples, and the mauves moving into purples and such, I just think it's so lovely. And in that first scene, it appeared to me that the light from the stained glass windows was maybe falling on the back wall and just echoing the image of your work. It's really lovely. And I thought that idea of the rolling the paper and the wall of the temple, I wouldn't have thought of that until you said it. And I said, of course, that's wonderful. I have utmost respect. I've seen some of your other work too, and just have the utmost respect for your creations.
Oh, I have a lot of respect for your practice as well, and the use of the deep purple and blues, and of course the gold with the icons is completely necessary. But the beautiful work, the paintings are stunning, very stunning. Anybody that's seen them has just been in awe of the icons. and with the text as well. I mean, goodness, it's very lovely.
Thank you.
And Robert, maybe you could share with us a little bit about the icon that we see behind you, Our Lady of
Okay.
Sorrows. This is a special sort of the unveiling, if you will. So please.
Yeah, I was wondering, is this the one that's coming?
I'll be sending it out soon. Sorry, I didn't mean to drop that. I'll be sending it out in the next couple days. But this is of course, as you said, the Mother of Sorrows. The Virgin is in a blue mephorion. In the East, they put her in a red mephorion, but then change it to blue at the crucifixion. And so it's entirely appropriate to have it in blue for the Mother of Sorrows. The three stars that you see on her shoulders and her head here on the garment represent her virginity. She was, is, and always will be a virgin. And that's of Syriac origin. The gold detail here, this fringe down here that you see is also traditional, and it's a priestly fringe. And so we always put it on the Virgin. And here, this is the prophecy of Simeon. You know, interestingly, Simeon at the presentation of Christ, the legend is he's 350 years old. And that's why when you say, the Lord let your servant depart, it's really meaningful if you think he was around for 350 years. And he was also, a legend has it that he was one of the translators of the Septuagint, also in Egypt before. But anyway, when she presents the child in the temple, then he says, a sword will pierce your heart. And so these are the sorrows of the Virgin that you see here, the 7 sorrows. And what else could I tell you about this? The background, the gold, she has an etched gold leaf crown up here. You can't really see it, I think, in the image on the computer. But the halo, the background is rolled gold. This is Holy Mother of Sorrows, pray for us. These up here, these monograms up here, it's the first and last letter of Mater, Mare, it is mother, and the line over it in Greek means that it's an abbreviation. And then over here, Theou, the first and last letters of God. And then, of course, the line over here represents the fact that it's an abbreviation. And then there are rules for the proportions of the face, proportions of the hands and such. There are a lot of rules that I work with, especially when I get into scenes and feast days, but also with images of saints, lone saints, and Mother of God. But the rules might seem like they're very extreme, but they're really not. I mean, we have many rules in our language when it comes to vocabulary and syntax and grammar and such, but you can say something that no one's ever said before. So I feel freedom within the rules. Also, I mentioned before that the light, we don't have shadows that are cast in an icon. And in fact, it's interesting, in the West, it's not until Masolino and Masaccio do the Brancacci Chapel where they do the life of St. Peter. And when St. Peter's shadow falls upon the one person is healed. So all of a sudden in the West, the artists were stuck with the idea of how do we make a shadow? And that's when shadows first appeared in the West. So in the East, we don't use shadows from an external light source. So that's why the face is the way it is. And the face is stylized. It moves from dark to light. And then finally, the lightest forms there are the enliveners, which are parallel light lines. What else can I tell you about this? Interestingly, in the West, you know, there's an interesting story about the blue on the Virgin in the West. In the early Italian period, the Virgin in the West had to be dressed in blue, and the church had the monopoly on ultramarine blue. It was only created only could be mined in Afghanistan, and it was called ultramarine because it came across the water to Italy. and the church had the monopoly on that. It was more expensive than gold, and they insisted that the Virgin always be placed in ultramarine blue. That was just a little trivia there. So this is a very Byzantine image here, but softened. I always soften my work somewhat to appeal to today's people. I hope that there's always a border on an icon too. We always place a border on icon, so it's sort of like a window into the spiritual. The other thing that's interesting for an icon, especially in the in the East, is that Gregory the Great, the Pope, said that there were three purposes for art. One was for beautification, one was the didactic purpose, and the other was a sacramental purpose. And so we believe that physical materials can be elevated by the grace of God to become a vehicle of salvation. And so they're venerated in the East more so than in the West. It's interesting, Bishop Robert Barron, I love him. Robert Barron talked about beauty and art in the church. This was quite a while back. And he was saying that art is the way that we attract people. Our beauty is the way that we attract people. And so you mentioned Vatican II, and I think that Vatican II, when they issued their document, seventh chapter there, where it talks about art, they're talking about how wonderful the artist is and all that sort of stuff. And yet, and then they talk about the fact that the art shouldn't be pompous, it shouldn't be ugly, there shouldn't be so much of it that you can't make it out. But I think that what happened after Vatican II, that people went overboard in removing things from churches. And I think that now we're coming back to a place where traditional church architecture is once again appreciated. And it reminds me of postmodern architecture, for example. The International School removed all the decoration from buildings. And then finally, there's something in man that needs art and needs that beauty. And the postmodern came along and started putting decoration back on buildings, so pendulum swings back and forth. I respect what the Vatican II did, but I think when it came into the practice, people went a little bit too far. But that's how it works. Pendulum swings both ways. So.
Well, thank you for that tour. We cannot wait for Our Lady of Sorrows to arrive and be with us. Her place is ready. When she does arrive, it will be a special moment. As we know, the feast of Our Lady of Sorrows, September 15th, is the patronal feast of Holy Cross. And so last year, September 15th, 2023, was when we dedicated the new Holy Cross Institute. We dedicated this space, and we dedicated it to Mary, our Mother of Sorrows. So it's as I said, it's been set, it's been waiting. So when she arrives in the form of this icon, it will be complete. So very much to look forward to there.
You should get at the end of next week.
Okay, great. So we are going to take questions from the audience. But before that, allow me just to say how much we appreciate you, those who have come and have been part of this webinar. If you have enjoyed today's webinar, please feel free to make a gift to the Holy Cross Institute. That helps us to cover all of our operating costs. As you know, we have a passion for mission, and your support allows us to share that passion with the entire family of Holy Cross. So thank you in advance for any contribution that you might be able to make. Gifts, small and large, are always appreciated, and they do go a long way. So the QR code that you're seeing there, you can capture that on your phone, and it'll take you right to our giving page, and it's easy from there. You can just follow the steps. So thank you very much. We want to thank you and really all our donors. It's been a wonderful year. Now I'm thinking of the fiscal year, which is in its final quarter. So But it's really been a great year. The outpouring of support for the Institute has been moving. It's allowed us to do convocation, as I told you earlier. I also mentioned our Holy Cross Charism Initiative, that online curriculum. All that is really your work in terms of the support that you give us. And finally, the amazing art and the beauty that emanates from the Holy Cross Institute at St. Edward's University. It's all only possible through your help and your support. AJ, I'm going to ask you to share with us, are there some questions from the audience for our guest artists?
Hi, Rich. Yes, I do. First off, Robert and Jenn, thank you so much for being here and your amazing talents that you shared with the HCI in our community. And one of the first questions I have goes to Robert, and that is the icons, the facial expressions that you have both in Blessed Basile Moreau, St. Andre, and now Our Lady of Sorrows. Do you think of the expressions at the beginning, middle, or end, or how does their facial expressions that you so eloquently paint come about? You know, I feel like it's hard to capture faces a lot of the time. Some artists don't even put faces at all. So how do you capture, and what process do you figure out what kind of facial expressions to put on your icons?
I would say that in all cases, in art, I think that we make copious notes and then throw them away and jump at it and do what we feel like doing. And I hope that I work in a synergistic way with God, and my prayers are such, and that I'm a vessel and a tool, and I try to be open to that. I try not to control too much. I try to let it take me. My icons change a lot during the process, and they don't usually end up where in a way that I might have visualized. So if that happens, then I feel very comfortable about it. If I've engineered it, which happens sometimes, I don't feel comfortable about it. So I try to bear in mind what's happening here in the icon, what it means and stuff, and then hopefully that will shape and inform my work. But at some point there you have to relinquish control.
Yeah, thank you. And the next question is for the both of you. Do y'all take into account location of where your art is going? How do you think of these concepts based on where they're going to be located, whether that's, in Texas and Austin, I guess the city, actually where it's going to be put at, in the exterior. How do you think about location in regards to art in your work?
Jenn?
Oh, do you want me to go first, I guess? Location. Well, it depends on the project, and it all depends. But I too, I love what you said about being a vessel and praying and just letting go of some of that control. But I work in paper, so a lot of times my work does need to go inside. But the piece that put me on the map is actually a paper piece that I let go outside and see what the elements of Mother Earth would do to it. And it morphed and shaped, and it was really beautiful what happened to it. And that's a piece that ended up being indoors and at the Pentagon, and then it went back outside on military installations. And so a lot of times with my work, because it moves around, I just make the work and it's not site specific. I just make it, and where it ends up going when I install it, I think about the site. But for the piece for Cross and Anchors, like it was made for that space specifically. And if it were to ever move, it would never, I don't know that it would be the same. Because I also want to say those, specifically those two windows, those stained glass windows are not just memorials for a veteran who lost his life in the Vietnam War, but for a veteran from where I'm from. And I saw the name, I saw Leonard Dornack, and I was like, how many Dornacks are there? You know, and I knew a girl who her mother was a Dornack and asked, do you know this man? And she was like, that's my second cousin. So, I mean, a small world, you know, and I'm a veteran, he's a veteran. I saw that they were, you know, Eagles, you know, and it's just like, I was meant to make that piece and put it there, you know, and I truly believe that, that our higher power put me there to make that work. And it was, I do believe that. And I believe that for several of the pieces, that I've made. But yeah, I hope I answered your question, but a lot of times I just make the work to make the work and then it lands where it lands. But yeah.
Thank you, Jenn.
Yeah, I just would echo that. That was lightning in a bottle, because the space was basically forgotten. It was almost lost space, and we walked in to it. This was well over a year ago, and we had talked about Jenn doing Across and Anchors, and the one thing in the space was the stained glass, which had sat there, again, forgotten and lost for probably 40 years. Close to that. And it was interesting too that that individual, Leonard Dornack, people didn't remember him, didn't know much about him, but subsequently it's almost as if his story has come back to life, because we've also located others who actually knew him when he was a student here and heard stories about him. So that has come back through the artwork as well. And of course, the fact that, you know, his life was one of selfless service to the ideals of his country. It just fits perfectly with that space and with our mission. Really, quite amazing. Excellent. So, AJ, are there any other questions from the land of chat?
Yes, well, I was wondering if Robert wanted to answer that question about location.
Yeah, great.
Oh, okay. If I'm doing a panel icon, usually there's not too much, unless the donor has something that he wants to say, I'll try to move with that, but there's not too much that's different. But most of my work is done for churches. And in the churches, usually in the Eastern Orthodox Church, the priest will confer with me because there are certain things that go in certain places. And so usually they'll ask me what's supposed to go there. And the different architecture of the churches also determines different placement of different icons. And so that informs my choices. Also, if we have, we paint things specifically for those areas of the churches that might have different, what am I saying? We have to distort things in certain areas of the churches to make them appear normal. It's an anamorphic process. So that, for instance, in the drum of a dome, if it's a narrow drum of a dome, then our figures, instead of being 8 heads tall, might be as much as 12 or 14 heads tall. So that when they're viewed in this manner, they'll appear to be the right proportions. So a lot of my work is geared that way. It has to do with distorting things so they appear to be correct. And the other thing is that I work with a number of different ethnic groups. And so I'm aware of the different traditions, and I change my style to, you know, make it good for them. I don't know if that helps or not, but
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Thank you. And the last question that I have here is, you know, Robert, you use painting a lot and Jenn works with paper. Have you ever explored different other mediums of art, your sculpture or anything of that?
well, I do mosaic work also, large scale mosaic work, and also the wall painting, which is different than the panel painting. I actually wanted to add something to the last answer, and that was that I'll give you an example of something I'm doing now. I'm waiting for a child to be born. What happens is traditionally the iconographers would wait till the child was born. They would cut the board for the patron saint of the child for the baptism at the length of the baby when he was born. So somewhere between 18 inches and 24 inches. I have a board here I'm ready to cut any day now for a baby that's about to be born. I have another one coming up in a couple months. So that would be a way that I really do make it special for an individual.
Oh, I love that. It's awesome. Wow. Okay, what was the question again? To go back to what was your last question, AJ?
It was about if you explore other mediums of art.
Oh, other mediums of art. Yes. I have no rules anymore. I had tons of rules before. But I have no rules anymore. At one point, all I was known for was rolled paper. And anytime I tried to do anything else, people like had opinions about it. And that was mostly whenever I had a studio in East Austin and people would come through and they would be like, but why? You're rolled paper. You should just do that. And yeah, then I went off to grad school and I've given myself the authority to make whatever I want, whenever I want to. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. So, with that being said, I do work in ceramics, paper making, painting, sculpture, on the wall, off the wall, on the floor, whatever I want. Fabric, sewing. I'm free. Yeah.
That breadth, it sounds like it is truly liberating, and it probably makes for great creativity.
Oh yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, over the past 6 months, last year I had a very intense art project that where I worked with Afghan women that served in the Afghan military and now are refugees in our country, and they're going through a lot of changes, and it's very, very heavy for them, and therefore working with them a lot was heavy on me. And since that project, I've taken time to just make work for myself. And I will say, working on projects like Cross and Anchors, which a lot of times my work is really heavy, and it's very heavy on death and topics that are just really serious and hard, and aren't full of joy. And Cross and Anchors was, and sometimes it's extremely liberating and a gift to allow myself to just make something that just feels really nice and like icing, instead of the labor of love that my work is. I love working with the topics that I do and the people that I do work with, but every now and then I need to work on something that fills that cup of joy too.
Thank you, AJ, for those great questions. Thank you, everyone. And forgive me, I think everybody who knows the Institute knows AJ. I just assumed that, but AJ Valverde is our manager of communications and the genius behind this webinar and all things technical that we do here at the Institute. So thanks, AJ. Thanks for that and everything that you do. As we get ready to wrap this up, I just want to thank the folks who have joined us today. We so appreciate that you have taken a little time out of your day, and we really want to thank you. And I ask you to join me in thanking our guests, Robert and Jenn. This has really been a stimulating hour. The conversation has been beyond my expectations. It's been simply great. And I think that it will allow us to go with an even greater depth into that special space of the Holy Cross Institute and to behold the great artwork that is your gift to us. So thank you so much. As we wrap up, I just have a few announcements. We have coming up at the end of this month an open house at the Holy Cross Institute. It'll be on our alumni weekend, so that's the occasion. And Saturday, April 27th in the morning from 9:30 to 11:30. Our doors are open. We would be delighted to see you. We'll have refreshments, and we will have, in addition to the amazing artwork that we've discussed today, a special bonus treat, some of the illuminations from the St. John's Bible that a donor, Dr. Lee Polanco, has graciously bestowed upon the Institute. So we have them also on exhibit for viewing. So please come and see how the Institute's vision is reflected in the sacred art and the icons and the St. John's Bible as well. Also, I just wanted to share with you upcoming events, including our Holy Cross Conference for Student Leaders, which will take place in June. There'll be 2 locations. So one is here in Austin on the St. Edward's campus in mid-June, the 12th to the 16th. These are conferences for Holy Cross high schools to select their rising seniors or juniors who might be leadership material, and they can come and be part of this program to learn about Holy Cross. So they get leadership training, but it's distinctively Holy Cross. And truly, these individuals who make the program typically go on to be leaders in high school, at their colleges, and really in the world. So there'll be the event here at St. Edward's, also for the Midwest schools. It's at Notre Dame at Holy Cross College later in June, the 25th through the 29th. So finally, just to wrap this all up, we are so delighted that you were with us, and please share with us any feedback that you have. We would be grateful to hear from you. You can use this QR code. The link is also in chat, and that will allow you to give us a little feedback and help us to think about the next webinars that we'll be planning for you. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. Special thanks to Jenn Hassin and Robert Gerwing, the artists of the Holy Cross Institute. Easter blessings on you. Easter blessings on us all. Ave Crux Spes Unica.